right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Brock Beard from lastcar.info. I know a little bit of a different plan here for this evening. I wasn't originally planning on doing a stream, but I know a few of you guys were interested in that. I do apologize. I got a fan going in the background. If it's a little too distracting on the audio, I can turn that off. Our air conditioning went out. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. This is coming up right after the conclusion of episode 6 of 500 Days, covering the Atlanta race. It's such a relief to get these episodes out this week. So I'm so glad to get these both up this past week. Certainly with the news of Harvick coming back to run the number 29 car this weekend, as I mentioned in chat, the push was really at that point kind of put pretty much everything else aside here and just try to just really focus on getting these going here at the same time. Of course, we left off this series back in January, right when Harvick announced his retirement, where we did the Rockingham episode. Had no idea, of course, that was going to happen. Just kind of turned out that way there. But getting that one done after the first 3 episodes of 500 Days. Once we got that done there, I've had a couple other projects in the meantime there. But yeah, I mean, I saw that video when Harvick was going to run the 29 Wilkesboro, and especially once we kind of had some trips fall through here in May. That opened up some time, thankfully. I think actually if we ended up doing some trips this spring, probably wouldn't have been able to make this happen. So I think in the long term, that worked out. That's going to kind of be a symbol of this year, is really kind of catching up on a lot of things. Derek Cope book's another one of those things. Certainly this series, Rise of the Field fillers, and really pushing to kind of get some more video content out here at the same time. And this was a big part of it. This is the first real big obstacle, and I'm so glad it turned out. There were a couple of things I rushed. There's a couple of things like, I probably should have fixed that or that, but I'm not going to let the perfect be the enemy of the done. So yeah, that came together very quickly. I don't think I even recorded it at the beginning of April. So it was like that close. But well worth it. Again, I almost thought of stretching this episode to next week, but I'm like, no, let's get this out before the Wilkesboro deal this weekend here. So I'm so glad we had so many people turn out. We had more than 200 people in both chats. I was worried, obviously, with the rain delays that they had in Wilkesboro and having the late model races there on Wednesday. I figured that was going to be kind of a smaller crowd, and that was fine because the Vegas race is more the setup for this one. But we still had a good amount of people in there. We still had more than 200 people in there, which is massive. So I'm glad that people are this passionate about this series, and hopefully the links, people are sharing the link and checking it out. Yeah, I mean, really, any number of things on that. So so I'm glad that came through. Thank you. Yeah, I just right off the bat can't thank everybody enough. Can't thank the Patreon enough for their support. I was able to afford the music licenses, and I bought some slides, a couple of pictures here. This is in addition to the pictures that Brian Hallman at the BRH Racing Archives produced. He contributed great material for all of these episodes, and especially these last couple. First pictures I've ever seen of Brendan Gaughan's 62 car at Las Vegas. He had the shot of the flower arrangement for Earnhardt at Las Vegas. I mean, tremendous materials. He's been such a huge part of making these really come together. Also got to thank Sergio Productions and Roman Senek Music, 2 separate musicians there that produced this fantastic royalty-free music. I have links to all of that in the caption. If you're interested in supporting them, they have a vast library of music. If you're interested in that for any of your projects, I couldn't recommend them highly enough. Both of their tracks, I believe Sergio's is the opening theme, and the last couple laps of the Atlanta race was Roman's theme. So both of them work together. I mean, I thought they were both the same channel at first because both of them fit together so well. But they produce tremendous music, and it's definitely something to certainly check out there at the same time. Another person I absolutely have to thank in this project, especially in this Atlanta one, is Richard Childress. Had a hard time keeping that secret. That was, as I posted it in the video, at the end of April. As the part 4 was really coming together, and I was still finishing the script really at that point. Recorded it, I believe, a week later. It occurred to me, it's like, look, I don't really know the story of why the paint scheme changed from white and black to white to red. And I've always wondered this, even as a kid. And it never really occurred to me to, even at the times I've done media work, it never occurred to me to, I've seen Childress at the track, it never occurred to me to stop him and say, hey, what was that about? Yeah, I guess, I don't know if that would have been the best way to do it or the circumstances. But big thanks to the folks over Richard Childress Racing. Their PR person was very helpful in setting up the interview. I was able to just talk to them on that. I made, I was like 50-50 if it was going to go through or not. If it didn't go through, I was going to at least bring up the rumored ones and say, whatever the reason, Harvick has this different scheme and kind of go from there. But to my surprise, maybe like 3 days later, they said, yeah, I mean, does this day and time work? And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And we talked for about 10, 15 minutes, thereabouts. The 10-minute section of the interview there is in the Patreon. I know it doesn't sound like a lot of time, but he was very candid on that. I mean, obviously, he didn't want to go into the immediate aftermath of Earnhardt's accident, and that was fine by me because I told him at the start this was going to be a project about the Atlanta race, about Harvick's earlier part of his career, and understanding what the deal was with that paint scheme, because I heard so many of these rumors, and I go over those other rumors about the All-Star paint scheme. He talks about where it came from, really even at Rockingham, and some deals in there. So there's a lot more that was in there. I thought about putting more of it in the video. Couldn't really find a good place to put it, because some of it would have fit more in the Rockingham episode. And again, I was going to put it for just the $10 members of the Patreon, but really, especially this weekend, I wanted as many people as possible to listen to it. I don't know if I'm going to make it publicly available, but certainly for anybody at the Patreon level. So if you're between $1 and $10 on that, you'll have access to that video. I believe I just had access to that this morning, but cannot thank him enough. He was tremendous. He was extremely candid on that. And he was, I mean, even when we finished the interview, I tried to think of more. I had some written questions. I tried to think of some more, and we probably could have kept going for, probably another 10 minutes or so, but I just didn't. He answered them so well that I was like, okay, well, I think that's it. And which is probably for the best. So, my parents always say, sometimes you got to leave a party when you're having the most fun, and that's probably the best. So that was kind of the way I went with that. But yeah, absolutely instrumental. And once I was writing the introduction, I mean, it was a perfect place to put that in there. So yeah, so we got a good combination of all of that in there. And I wanted to also make sure it premiered early enough that it could circulate. I haven't sent the link to Childress's team yet, but I certainly intend to. And hopefully they like it, and other people can check it out. I did try to reach out to Harvick. I reached out to his PR person as well. It's a bit different with drivers. Driver availability is a bit more difficult. They did send me a press release about the announcement of the paint scheme and had some information in there, but really didn't really add too much more. I thought the interviews that he gave at the time when the race happened were probably better to use, so none of that was really used in the video. But that's publicly available too, so if you're interested in more about his thoughts from that race weekend and the paint scheme there, that would be another thing you could certainly check out there at the same time. But yeah, that was a big part of that, and getting that set up and done was definitely a huge goal. I gotta say, I'm so thrilled with everybody's response to this. I hope you guys have been enjoying it. I hope you guys are kind of brought back to that time period, but not all the bad parts of it, of course. I mean, but this is certainly, in this Atlanta episode in particular, just an absolute thrill. And nothing can really fully replicate just how tremendous that was when nobody knew that Harvick was going to win that race, and just wondering, where did this kid come from? Now, of course, we know in hindsight, I mean, he was tremendous in the Busch Series. He was testing a lot of Earnhardt's cars, including the car he was actually running, and just had a tremendous early career, and really a veteran mentality, was kind of ahead of the curve there. But, considering the fact, the more research I did on this, the more I realized, yeah, this is like his first 500-mile race. The length, I mean, he mentioned this at the end of the Vegas episode, that he was just adjusting to the longer length of the races. I mean, the 312-mile race at Atlanta was the longest one they had on the schedule, and even that was like another 8 or 10 miles longer than races traditionally were in that series back then. So, there was that to adjust to, and then, the horsepower rules had changed in the Busch Series, but, it really looking at this, you know, with kind of fresh eyes and trying to get a bit more of the context to it to really understand the story, that was something I definitely wanted to really capture in the episode there, and I hope it did. Because I know, for me personally, you know, as I mentioned on this channel, I was a hardcore Jerry Nadeau fan, still am. This is definitely a race where he featured very prominently in it, had a fantastic car out there, the same car he won with in 2000, in fact, and coming back from a spin at the very beginning of it, to be battling for the lead for so much of the race. And then you got the other drivers that were not, that were, you know, not as fortunate, that had some bad luck in there. Certainly in this race here between Matt Kenseth and, of course, Dave Blaney. You know, there were many drivers that got their first win in the 2001 season. A lot of underdogs that outperformed. But there were a lot of moments where, just as easily, these drivers didn't pull it off, but they maybe had the best run of their career or one of their best runs. And certainly for Blaney, this was absolutely the case. I know there's another channel out there that does something on heartbreaking finishes and features Blaney in that one. And it's, as you can see from this episode, it's definitely deserving of that. It was a massive, and it just, again, nothing the team could do. You break one of those little spindles on there, you know, on the hub, and you can't get the lug nut on there, and it creates enough of vibration that the wheel just comes right off. I mean, there's nothing you can do. I mean, it was nothing from the driver or even the pit crew. Just a part fails, and that was the, you know, as too often happens in any motorsport. But the drama of this, I think, is going to be something that's going to be built on in this and future episodes as well. This is why, and again, this isn't so much an editorial episode like we do after the post-race shows, but this is why I'm so passionate about why it's important to craft stories out of races. I know we get a little bit of that these days because, of course, you know, you got the Ross Chastain deal, and, you know, you're going to have drivers that just don't get along with each other and so forth. But it's much more than that. When you break down a race and all the little things that happen, whether it's somebody having a good run for a little bit or not, or somebody just scuffs the wall, or maybe has a good pit stop, or maybe tries a different strategy, all those are little moments in there. And when you string them all together, you know, you realize that, you know, a race is not just one person just crushing the field. You can have multiple different people working into it, and especially when you had a package, and of course an Atlanta track itself that was much racier than what we have now. It's tremendous. I mean, you didn't really have a favorite in that entire race, and even when Jeff Gordon had you know, such a great start to that 2001 season, you know, things weren't perfect there either. They had the poor qualifying run in Vegas, had to come back from that. They had a technical infraction at Rockingham. Then they go back to Atlanta. They run out of gas, have to get their lap back, get stuck a lap down, first by Blaney and then by Nadeau, and then basically have to employ team orders to get him on the lead lap. Otherwise, he would have even been a factor at the end of that. We talk about Sterling Marlin back in the Daytona 500, that he wouldn't have been a factor in the finish had he been in, had he not had that flat tire at the end. Those are the storylines that really make, you know, a race stand out. And I think, you know, I think those things are still happening. I see them when I, you know, follow the last place finishers in the races, because you'll have that. You'll have a driver that has a mechanical issue and they come back out there, maybe they gain a couple of spots, or, you know, I mean, all this other stuff is happening behind the scenes that we just don't hear about. And if that much is happening at the back of the field, imagine how much is happening at the front. So, you know, we got a little bit of this with, you know, radio traffic and so forth. But that's really what I think is so important. And rather than just sitting on the sidelines and complaining like the old boomer that I am, I guess, even though I'm 40, you know, 40 going on 80, I suppose. You know, I'm trying to kind of put out a positive example of that, and I hope that comes across. And I'm really pleased with the people's response to these episodes. And certainly, again, with the significance of this weekend, thought about doing something with Wilkesboro, of course. You know, I mean, obviously everyone is, and there's some great stuff out there already. But especially with this series already started, I think that the best thing I could do would try to do something with this, with the Harvick story. And yeah, I hope a lot of people that either weren't around back then or were too young to remember it, you know, watching the race is one thing, and it's emotional enough as is, absolutely. You know, I think the biggest challenge in writing this was figuring out where to just shut up and let the video play. But that was definitely, you know, a factor in this. But to really kind of capture the emotions of it and realize why it was so big, and why it still stays so big now, and why Harvick reacted the way he did when he was talking about just the thought of running that number again. Yeah, it makes you think, and that's a big part of the sport. So that's just kind of so that's kind of where that works out there too. Yeah, I mean, this was certainly a passion project, and it is not over. I will say this right here. I know I get a lot of questions about this. I guess I haven't made it clear enough. I'll probably do a trailer at some point here to clear this up. I do intend on doing an episode like these for the entire remainder of the 2001 NASCAR Winston Cup season. So that will be, each episode will feature a Winston Cup race, which means that it will feature, there will be a standalone episode on the All-Star race. There will certainly be an episode on the Dover race, the first race after 9/11. We're going to handle that as delicately as one can because, of course, it's YouTube restrictions and so forth. But, it's no more delicate than trying to handle Dale Earnhardt's thing. Of course, different scale, of course, in the story, but it's certainly going to be in there. And the Sears Point episode, I intend to bring in pictures from my own personal collection from when I was in the stands that weekend. So kind of give you, maybe that one will be a little more personal maybe than some of the episodes. Still want to kind of, keep it as objective as possible. So maybe not too much of that, but maybe a little bit. 2001 was also the year that Lastbro and I started doing the picks of the week, which is for the September Darlington race. So this is a season that really has a lot of significance. For me personally, it was my last year in high school. I graduated in June of that year, and I started my freshman year at UC Irvine that September, 5 days after the attacks. I think that's why this season stands out so much, especially, I mean, on top of course, the obvious reasons this season stands out in its own little bubble there of everything that happened right from the last lap of the 500 to the season finale that ended up in New Hampshire for the reasons of everything that happened that season. So this is going to be a large project. It will not be an episode every day. It will not be an episode every week. It may not even be an episode every month. Hopefully it's something closer to that. I know somebody in the comments was saying, I can't wait till I graduate from high school and then this series will be done in 5 years. I don't know. I don't have a firm statement on that, but I do have a plan to, I have outlines for all the episodes, at least a template that I can kind of drop stuff into, because the information that I kind of research sometimes comes in kind of jagged. Like sometimes something could fit for an episode 6 episodes from now, or sometimes something else could become for the next episode. But that's going to be the focus. So each episode is going to focus on a Cup Series race. Now, the support races, this is going to be interesting. Obviously, these last couple, we've had the Busch Series race that ran that weekend. There was also a Truck Series race that was run, I believe, the same day as the Las Vegas race. And you notice I didn't talk about that in that episode. What I'm going to do, though, is that when a series is at the exact same track or in the area, as in the case of Indianapolis, we're going to do the IRP and Indianapolis events in the same episode, I believe. But where a series comes back after a few weeks off or maybe a few weeks of standalone events, we'll summarize those along the way. Because I think some episodes are going to be a little bit lighter on content than others. The other restriction, of course, is what footage is available. That was certainly an issue in these episodes because not all the practice or qualifying sessions are there. So I got to kind of work with that a little bit. So no 2 episodes are going to be the same, and I think that's going to keep the series fresh going forward. So when we have another episode where the Truck Series is part of the same action at the same track, which does happen, I believe Dover and Richmond and some of those tracks did, we'll summarize the other races we haven't talked about yet and kind of bring that in there because that's going to be necessary to understand what's at stake. So that's going to be kind of the plan. And that focus also will allow each episode to focus on the Cup Series race from each episode. So the plan is, I believe that would be about 34 episodes, 33, 34 episodes remaining in this. But again, it's not going to be done I'm sure it's not going to be done this year. It's certainly not going to be done this month. But we're going to, produce them as best as possible. What I wanted to do was have a series, not necessarily that would be easier to produce, but something where if a project I'm doing like the field fillers takes a bit longer, I could use this to kind of fill the gaps in there because it's kind of self-contained on the research I can produce versus interviews I need to get. Certainly in this one here, I getting Harvick on there, or getting Childress on there was massive. I mean, definitely had to do that. I'm not sure how much of that we're going to get in future episodes, but I'm certainly open to that. So that's kind of going to be the plan there too. I'll probably talk about this on our Wilkesboro show this coming Sunday after the All-Star race. That's going to be kind of late at night, but no doubt there's going to be a lot to talk about from the Truck Series and the Cup Series action from this weekend as well. So basically, I'm really pleased with the response so far. Hopefully we get some good traffic on that, get the series some more attention. One other thing I do want to mention as well is I received several comments about the audio levels in the first, especially the first 2 episodes, but I think it was a problem really in all 4 of the episodes of balancing the audio and the track, the broadcast audio. I tried to balance that a bit better in these last 2. Actually went through a couple drafts of that. Those of you in the Patreon actually got to hear a couple versions of it because it was kind of something I was still working on. But hopefully that was a little bit better. I'm actually currently right now uploading another version of the first 4 episodes back to back. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just put it into one video. It's like going to be 8 hours long of the first 4 episodes with the audio adjusted. So it's not blowing out your ears. You don't have to keep adjusting the volume up and down. So I certainly don't want that to be distracting. I think that's affected how well the videos have done. I don't want to take down the old ones because I don't want to lose the chat and the comments. And there's, it's certainly the firsthand reactions of when they premiered. But I think for fixing the audio issue, I think it's a compelling enough issue to fix that. I know there's a couple clips in there too that are a little bit too quiet. So I'm kind of bringing those up too. So hopefully once that's remastered a little bit, again, I'm no George Lucas. I can't, I don't have the best skills at that, but I think it'll be better than what we had in the first ones there. And you'll have that access too. So what that'll do is that'll be the start of a new playlist that'll have all the episodes here for the full season one. So you'll have the playlist for the Daytona 500 episodes, the old ones, and then you'll have a playlist for these that are the following episodes for the season. And the first part of that is going to be the long video to bring up all the other ones. But it'll have the same content, so you don't have to watch it all over again unless you want to. But it's going to have the same exact content from the first 4 episodes, just with the audio adjusted in that. So that will be a big thing to certainly bring up at the same time. So a lot of things we're working on here. And all of this before the Wilkesboro weekend this weekend. Again, very excited to hear what more people think about this episode and so forth coming up. And that's going to be a big thing to be working on here at the same time. There's no firm deadline as to when this series ends, but I do plan on making it on all the races from the 2001 season. And you're going to it's going to backfill what happens in Xfinity and trucks. And also, really, any other support races. I tried to find footage from the West Series race in 2001 at the Bull Ring for the Vegas race, but wasn't able to find any there. But there's so many great people that are archiving video out there, and I definitely want to make sure to give them credit as possible. Dave W., King Cuervo 88, Battalion Fan. I mean, some of these other channels out there. I got them linked in the videos as well. That's going to be kind of a rotating group as well. We got a playlist there of the video content used in there. Some people have really high quality versions of these races, which is fantastic. I love it when they have the qualifying sessions too, because that really kind of allows you to kind of get more of the storylines building up through the week. I wish they had that for the Atlanta spring race. I think they have it for the fall race. We didn't have that from here. So some are going to have more interviews than others, but again, I think that's going to keep it fresh because some of the episodes are going to have way more interviews than others. Some are going to have more footage than others. But I got, with the graphics package that I set up from the silly season deal, I think that's going to allow all that to kind of tie together. So this is going to keep going. Field Filler is going to keep going. I have a couple standalone videos in the works, one of which it's pretty much I just need to edit it and get it ready to record. So that'll probably be the next one I'll be working on here shortly. But again, thank you so much, everyone, for your support of these projects. And the best thing you can do to support these, if you're interested in the Patreon, we got $1, $5, $10 levels on that. If you're interested in that, I got some swag I can mail out. We had a couple new people join the Patreon this week, and I just sent out some stickers here this week. As well, I still have the BJ McLeod cards I'm sending out as well. Once the Patreon cards are exhausted, I'm going to start using the ones from the eBay auction as well. So those will be available. But if you're not able to do that, I totally get it. Best thing you can do is just share the links to these videos, share them with your friends, have them check it out. That's the important thing. We're not the biggest channel out there. We're making we're making huge strides. I think we're got like 25,000 subscribers, kind of is what we're shooting for at this point. We're getting close to 20,000. And yeah, just one step at a time. Just try to, the best, that's one of the measurements, I guess, of really, where all these channels are. And we're making up some ground on that. And I couldn't do it without you guys. So I do appreciate that. Yeah. So really, again, I didn't really plan on doing too much here with the live stream tonight. I don't know if we'll do trivia tonight, but we'll definitely do that for our Sunday show here. Yeah, if you guys have any questions from the videos, I'll definitely run that by here. I'll kind of look over the comments here to talk about this as well. I'll put it in the comments too for sure, so everybody knows when to tune in for the stream, so they don't sit through about 53 minutes of silence here at the beginning. So if you're watching this after the fact, hopefully I've done that, so you don't have to sit through nothing there at the beginning of this. Let's see here. Yeah, Ross Chastain fan would be very storybook if it wins on Sunday. Yeah, I'm hoping. It would be tremendous, especially since Harvick did some testing at Wilkesboro during that time it was closed. It's certainly going to be a car I'll be watching that weekend, but we'll find out. But yeah, let's see. If you're talking, get the September races. Yep. Just looking over the other comments here and that. Yep, about the Childress interview. Yeah, again, I'm so glad you guys enjoyed that there. And again, if you're in any level of the Patreon, again, not just the $10. A $10 level, I'm trying to create some content for just people in that level. That's one of the big projects I'm looking to kind of take under this year, because I really want to kind of get some more in there for that group, because they're the top tier guys. I really got to make sure to take care of them even more than I have on that. Maybe we'll do like a different series that's like patron only. That's what I think would be best. But we'll figure something out on that. The other levels there, everybody in the Patreon there, they'll have access to the full interview. Richard Childress does talk about, the Rockingham paint scheme. I asked him about the rumor about the All-Star paint scheme that got talked about. He answers that. I asked about the team uniforms, where they ran the plain white uniforms versus the Earnhardt uniforms, which they brought back in Vegas. I asked him about that. There's some things he doesn't remember as clearly as others. I mean, it's obviously it's been so many years ago. But again, I thought he was extremely helpful on that. I would love to see. I would love to see if he actually has the drawing of what they showed to GM Goodwrench to say they wanted the red paint scheme. That would be kind of interesting to find out. But as he said, he wanted to kind of give Harvick his own identity. And then the timing couldn't have been more perfect. It's literally the first race that he ran that white and red car. And then what does he do? He wins it, and then that's his own. He runs it pretty much the entire year. They had a blue and white version he ran at the end of the year because Reese's was on board at that time, and they sponsored the Fast Break candy bar, by the way, which is still a last car favorite. That's still my go-to when I go by a 7-Eleven. And I think that's probably why. Actually, come to think of it, probably my favorite snacks all came from 2001. Code Red came out in June, and that was my last band gig when I was in high school. They had a tent set up there that was like saying, hey, this is a new Mountain Dew flavor. And that was like June of 2001. I mean, I don't know. I guess my tastes haven't really changed too much since then, so that's probably another part of it there. That was definitely another part of that there too. Let's see. I talk about Blaney. Yeah, just a heartbreak on that. Let's see here. 2001 was NASCAR at its best, but also at its worst. Charles Peterson. Yeah, that's a very fair. That's a fair assessment. It was an exhausting year. That was the one where I think I posted it either on Twitter. I think I put it on Twitter that I did a drawing for like each one of the races in 2001. And I think that was generated. I mean, I usually just did a lot of doodles just in my free time. I'm certainly no, Harris Liu or Sam Bass or any of those guys. But I've always just enjoyed kind of just messing around with my colored pencils and stuff, even back then. And, I think it was because of just all the hype that was going into that season. And, you know, obviously the season started the way it did, and I ended up doing one for the whole season there. I'll probably integrate that into one of these videos here at some point. I kind of like to bring that up like we did with diecasts back in the old one, and then the program in this one, or the Vegas one there as well. But that would be another one to look at. Victory Lane, UC Irvine, that's awesome. My sister is also an Anteater. Okay, right on. Excellent. I'm doing very well. Thank you very much for your comment there as well. Yep, that was mine. 4 years, 2001, class of 2005. I was on the rowing team all 4 years. I was about 100 pounds lighter than I am right now. It was a great experience, great campus. I watched, the second half of that year, well, more than the second half, I guess really the last part of that season, September, the September Dover race was really the first one, through the championship. I get the championship at home at New Hampshire. I saw that at home, of course, because it was Thanksgiving weekend. That'll be something that'll be certainly covered in this. But the other ones, yep, saw it on campus. Had a TV with the old rabbit ears. I remember I couldn't watch the Fall Martinsville race live because it was on cable, and I just had the bunny ear TV there. So that was one I actually watched just on like a live leaderboard back then. And unfortunately, technology was not quite where it is now. But that was my experience back then. I'll probably be another part of one of those videos too. But that was definitely another excellent race for sure. But we'll talk about that. JS, no worries, man. The video is live though. It's okay, you missed the premiere, but the video's live, so you guys can check it out for sure. I don't know when the next premiere is going to be. It's not going to be tomorrow, and it's not going to be next week. I haven't even finished the script on that one yet. But again, I'm probably going to do the standalone video next. And also, we're getting closer to getting the Derek Cope book done. I know I've been teasing that a lot, but we're getting there. We're getting pretty close to an important threshold on that. Which is not just the cover illustration, but also we're going to tweak the title, I think, too. And a lot of that's going to be kind of contingent on really talking with the Copes on that. So we're going to work on that very soon. Let's see. Caleb Turnbow. Oh, thank you so much. You say you reminded him of old NASCAR yearbooks that came out in the season. Thank you so much. I'm glad it reminds you of that. I remember... Love to do the season reviews, paint schemes for sure, or paint schemes and seasons and whatever happened in each of the races all year. I'll always love that too, and fitting the storylines together and understanding. That's the best view of history. Is it's all cause and effect. This happens. It's not just isolated events that happen in a sequence. You can see just from these first 6 episodes how all the interconnections and all the little things. Something maybe seemed like it was really small at Daytona, but then it's massive by the time it gets to Atlanta, and it really determines how the race plays out. And then all these people and all these crews and these teams and drivers, it all plays out. And there's some of these races from 2001 I don't remember as clearly. The Darlington race, for example, this could be the next episode. I remember very little of that race. I remember the fall race that year. I think it was because it was right before I went to college, but the spring race I don't remember as clearly. So it'll be fun to kind of revisit that one as well. And I'm sure it will be for you guys too. But we'll have more updates on that coming up. We'll do a premiere. I like to do the premieres for the field filler episodes, except for the All-Star one. I did that one as kind of a special deal to kind of kickstart that series. But the next field filler one, I'd like to kind of do a premiere for that. And these 500 days ones, I think, are bigger ones that need to be done for that. Shorter videos or, other things like that, I think we'll probably do different on that. Let's see. Will the 2001 Indy 500 be featured in the Coke 600 video? Good question. I'll probably touch on it. I don't think it'll be featured as a lap-by-lap moment thing. We'll see. I hadn't thought of that. That's a very good point, because that's very much one to bring up. And then, of course, with the Kyle Larson deal that was announced today, it's very much back in the news again. Might be a race we might cover next year. Who knows? We'll see. We were actually very close to doing something with Indy this year. Unfortunately, fell through. So maybe next year. Who knows? We'll find out. You heard it here first. So we'll see what we have on that. Let's see. Yeah, Harvick's RCR schemes were pretty top-notch. Absolutely. For sure. Your band sing the Bush Beer Mountain Jingle, Death Killer. Nope. I was just in the jazz band. I did do marching band. I didn't like it that much. We did Footloose and we did some other ones. I always thought the marching stuff was kind of fun, but I didn't like doing all the practices and stuff. But jazz band was fun. That was kind of cool. It was very strange. When I was in the jazz band, we'll probably do like one of these days, I'm probably going to do a stream where I'm just going to try to not talk about NASCAR and see how long I could do it before I slip up and then the stream will end. That'll probably be a challenge there. We'll see how far that goes. But probably one thing I could talk about, when I was in the band there, the last like 3 gigs I had were new businesses that were opening. And one of them was, let's see. Last 3. It was the spring of 2000. Spring. It wouldn't be before I graduated then. Spring of 2000, the Walmart opened, and we did a thing for that. We actually got to play some elevator music in there, which is kind of funny. And then in 2001, we did the CVS. That's where they did the Mountain Dew display, and that was my last one. And my next to last one was a dentist's office that was opened up the block, and we played in the room down there. So that was kind of fun. But yeah, that was way back when. So that was kind of a different deal there. Let's see. That's right. It was Code Red. It's 22 years old. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Code Red itself could drink if it could. I mean, I guess that's appropriate. I'd say segments. Yeah, there you go. Alrighty. But really, I got to say, I mean, I'm very excited about this weekend. I've been watching kind of the transition here, the Wilkesboro races, the Truck Series races at Wilkesboro these last couple of nights, and really enjoying that. I'm be very interested to see how the track races versus those, because you got some kind of long green flag runs in those races, especially the 96 race, which is the last time they run. They only ran 2 truck races there because the Truck Series was very, very new. Back in 1996. And it's kind of, if you watch those, and again, people have posted both races on YouTube, so definitely something to recommend checking out. They're actually pretty short videos. One's 150 laps and there's 250 laps. But interesting to kind of see the differences. In fact, both the last place finishers from those races are numbers that are not in the race this year. So we're pretty much guaranteed to get a first time last place finisher with the Truck Series number. I'm also getting my stats together on the Cup Series side. We'll, of course, do the All-Star stats from the same one there, since it is ostensibly the All-Star race. But, of course, we're going to be mindful of the North Wilkesboro history, too. So I'm going to get my Wilkesboro stats on hand, too, and we'll have some fun with that. We'll talk about the most recent time that a driver finished last at Wilkesboro with a different car number or manufacturer, and kind of talk about what are going to have to be some different names in the group. I, for one, am particularly, certainly very excited about this. I've been so thrilled with what's been happening in the Wilkesboro area. They did a parade today. Richard Petty was involved in it. They brought one of his 84 Pontiacs out there. They did the Hauler Parade. Lefty Lucy, Righty Tighty was live streaming that earlier today, following the Rick Ware hauler through there. It's just tremendous, and I am... certainly as an old school fan, my fondest memory of North Wilkesboro growing up was actually very late in its history. The one that stands out to me the most is the 1995 Tyson Holly Farms 400, where Ernie Irvan came back from his injury at Michigan, and he finished 6th in the number 88 car. The first time that Robert Yates fielded the number 88, Irvan actually ran the truck race and the Cup race that weekend. So again, that truck race, like I was mentioning earlier, the 150 lapper, Irvan was in that and actually led some portion of that. But I remember him being in 6th place and just seeing the leaderboard on the side and hoping he could get a top 5 in his first start back. It was very close to that. That's what really stands out in my mind. But it's so great, so thrilling to see the track back. Such a great turnout out there. I mean, it's going to be huge. And I hope it gets a points-paying race for the Cup Series. I think that would make the comeback complete. And I'll tell you what, I mean, unfortunately things kind of slipped through for the All-Star race for us this year. I would push very hard to try to make going out there for the 400 lapper happen, because I think that would be a huge moment. I know First Union doesn't exist anymore and Holly Farms doesn't exist anymore. It's cool to have Tyson out there as a Truck Series sponsor for the race weekend. But that's one I'm definitely looking to certainly cover coming up. We're very anxious to see what the schedule is going to be for next year. We got a couple of ideas for next summer, saving up some hours of vacation over at work and everything. So hopefully we can kind of do something bigger. What I'd love to do is string a couple races together and loop in something like that on the East Coast, if not the Midwest there, and kind of figure things out. Or both, who knows? But that's kind of what we're looking at going forward here. But in the meantime, it's going to be huge watching it this weekend here. Marcus Smith over at SMI, everybody involved, Dale Jr., Matt Dillner, Jake Finch, all the other people that have been involved in making this effort happen. I couldn't thank them enough. I mean, I know it required certain other elements kind of fall into place, but still it took the willingness to do it. It took a literal grassroots effort to kind of even get the ball rolling. And it's so exciting to hear it. I always heard for so many years, oh, they'll never go back there. The plumbing's a nightmare. The trees have grown into the things, and they're going to have to just tear the whole track out and do the sewer system over, and they're going to have to do this, and they're going to have to do that, and just all these reasons they couldn't do it. I mean, I know that, people have been talking about Save the Speedway and stuff this week, but really there was a lot of negativity about that, and I think it did kind of cross the line to an extent, and it also became symbolic of, I think, this dismissiveness towards some older fans of the sport. And I think NASCAR, unfortunately, embraced that to an extent during the time that they were kind of away from the track, saying, oh, no, we need to do this. We need to go to these venues. We need to go to these tracks. And much like with the Southern 500, they've realized that, well, wait a minute, no, we probably shouldn't have done that. Like, I remember the meme back in the late 90s. It's like, oh, NASCAR is too big for North Wilkesboro. It's like, what? It's like it's too big for Wilkesboro, but it's just right for Bristol. It's just right for Martinsville. It's just right for Richmond. Like, that doesn't make any sense. But obviously, with all the tracks in the close area, you kind of have a way that, everything kind of, I mean, Slapshoes covered this pretty well in his video to discuss, like, how you have all these tracks in a small area and, they're going to take each other's audiences away. And that's certainly a lot to ask. But I think if we get one points-paying race there, I think that should at least be negotiable at this point, especially since some of the other tracks, have kind of had different things happening there too. So we'll see. But it's great to have some positivity there, and it's such a wonderful olive branch that NASCAR and SMI have extended to the older fans out there. Because, I mean, realizing that, and there's been a lot of change in the sport, and the sport always does change, and it should change. And some have been more embraced than others. Some I don't think we're entirely sold on here. Certainly with the next-gen car comes to mind. But to bring back North Wilkesboro, to do it respectfully, to preserve the track surface, to preserve that big, beautiful wall with the old Winston Cup logo on it there. They could have very easily just covered that up and smeared it with some ugly, Coke ad or something like that. They could have easily done that, but they didn't. They didn't have to do the leaderboard with the old school tattered leaderboard on there. They didn't have to do that, but they did. And that's big, and that needs to be recognized, and that needs to be celebrated. And I hope we see a lot of celebration of that this weekend. And as I said on Twitter, I don't care how it races. I don't care if it goes caution-free and the winner wins by 3 laps. It's North Wilkesboro. And in fact, North Wilkesboro is the most recent Cup race to have the race winner win by a full lap, Jeff Bodine in 1994. In fact, Jeff Bodine won like a caution-free race there in 92. So it has a history of that. I would caution people against expecting that it's going to be a complete, slam bang affair in this one here. But I think the historical significance is enough. The 94 Brickyard was like this. There were extents of that race that had long green flag runs and stretched the field out here. But people still talk about it because it was that historically significant, to the point where now there's talk about it coming back, which I would absolutely support too, and would also love to cover that event. So I think we're on the upswing here, and we're finding a nice balance here between respecting the history of the sport, what made the sport great, and also embracing some new aspects to it. Again, new drivers, new teams, new cars out there. I mean, and then you got some throwbacks that are extending into this. I love the Tyler Hill or Timmy Hill, Jerry Hill throwback on the 56 truck. The Mark Martin one for Michael McDowell looks good, and of course the Richard Petty one, even though the roof shouldn't be black, it still You know, even though it's got the roof rails that are black instead of blue, it still looks pretty good. It still looks nice, and it's a nice update of it. And so that's cool. So that's what I think. I hope we have this weekend, and you know, we'll certainly find out in these days coming up here. So I'm going to kind of leave it on that note here. You know, on for the show here tonight, we'll do trivia in our show this coming Sunday. Our next show is going to be this Sunday after the Cup Series All-Star race at North Wilkesboro. We will talk about the Truck Series race this weekend. We'll talk about the open races, the heat races, what we got. Gosh, we got pit competitions tomorrow. We got just a stacked weekend here. So it's actually probably good that we ended up doing a stream today just to kind of take care of the 500 days element. And we'll still talk about this if it fits in the conversation. But we'll cover that as well. So that will be our next show there. So in the meantime, my Twitter feed is @LastCarOnBrock. My Patreon feed, patreon.com/LastCarOnBrock. Of course, this channel here on YouTube, definitely check out my videos featuring 500 days, as well as other content out there. But again, stay tuned for our next show this Sunday night. Be kind of a night owl show, I suppose, following the All-Star race this coming Sunday there. But we'll definitely have plenty to talk about here. So enjoy the races this weekend. I know I will. And thank you again so much for all your support of 500 Days and the content on this channel. And we'll see you on Sunday.